Back with me now is John Kirby, National Security Coordinator for Strategic Communications at the White House. Apologize for that. John, let's talk about this. The president has talked to Prime Minister Kishida of Japan. They have jointly condemned this missile launch, which was more provocative than other launches have been. You've heard, of course, what Victor Cha said, that North Korea, Kim Jong-un, does not seem to be listening to his only real ally, China, either, because he's timed this just days before China's big party convention.
Yeah, look, very troubling development here with this most recent launch. Certainly not the first one we've seen this year, but they're definitely the most recent. And there's a range here that's of concern in terms of how long this missile was able to travel, particularly over Japan. And that's one of the reasons why the president wanted to speak with Prime Minister Kishida today, to reassure the prime minister that the United States takes seriously our commitments to Japan's defense. You saw that exercise we conducted with Japanese fighters, as well as an exercise that we conducted over the West Sea with our South Korean allies. Now, this is not unusual. I mean, in recent months, unfortunately, we have had to conduct these kinds of exercises in response to North Korean provocative actions. It's obviously a violation of the UN Security Council resolutions, and we're going to keep discussing and consulting with allies and partners about the best way forward. But this is obviously destabilizing and does nothing to enhance security and stability in the Korean Peninsula, or quite frankly, in the Western Pacific.
How worried are you about a nuclear test, which he has not done since 2017?
Yeah, we're watching that as best we can, Andrea. I don't have anything specific to say today about what the chances are. Obviously, that would also be deeply concerning and deeply destabilizing to security in the region. And also, of course, a violation of national security resolutions as well. And certainly the United States and the international community would most likely have to respond in some way to ratchet up continued pressure on Kim Jong-un. You know, we've said we're absolutely committed to the denuclearization of the peninsula and into North Korea, and that we're willing to sit down with Kim Jong-un without preconditions and to start a diplomatic path forward. We have said that repeatedly, and repeatedly he has ignored those entreaties. And really, you know, we would urge him to be willing to sit down and have those discussions so that this doesn't have to come to blows.
Is there anything else that we can offer?
I think, you know, we've been nothing but frank and candid about our willingness, again, to sit down with no preconditions. We've also been frank and candid, as the president was with the prime minister of Japan today, that we take seriously our security commitments under these two alliances. We are allied with South Korea and we are allied with Japan. And those are serious security commitments which we will honor. And so we're going to make sure that, short of diplomacy, which is obviously the preferred path, that we are ready from a military perspective to protect our interests and those of our allies in the region.
Now, Ukraine has been advancing and forcing Russia to retreat in both Donetsk and Luhansk. More advances by Ukraine today, more retreats from Russia. As Vladimir Putin gets increasingly cornered, his back against a wall, we saw his speech on Friday, which frankly struck some as alarming. Is there some concern that this is not just the madman theory, but that Vladimir Putin could do something truly crazy?
We are obviously watching events unfold very, very closely, as you might imagine, and we're in constant touch with our Ukrainian counterparts at all levels of the government. We have been monitoring as best we can Mr. Putin and his activities since the very beginning of this invasion back in February, and we'll continue to do that. And we have been concerned about potential escalation of this war, which is in nobody's interest, no matter how it gets escalated. Mr. Putin, you asked about what he could do. What he could do, quite frankly, Andrea, is pull his troops out of Ukraine. He could do the right thing by ending this war today. And short of that, clearly he shows no signs of being willing to stop the fighting. In fact, everything you're seeing it shows you that he actually wants to keep that fighting going by calling up these reservists and by annexing these additional territories. But short of doing the right thing, he could certainly agree to sit down with Mr. Zelensky and have a negotiated settlement, and let's find a peaceful way out of this war.
We've heard reassuring comments from Lloyd Austin, from other officials, you as well, that we've seen no signs of nuclear weapons, any kind of movement or prepositioning. Would we necessarily see anything how would we know if he's going to do something from his territory?
What I can tell you is that we have been able to monitor his nuclear capabilities as best we can. And that continues to be right up till today. We monitor it as best we can. And what I can continue to tell you again today is that we haven't seen any indication that Mr. Putin has made a decision to use those kinds of weapons of mass destruction, certainly not nuclear weapons. And we certainly have seen nothing that would give us pause to change our own strategic deterrent posture or our ability to defend our allies and partners on the European continent. But we watch this as closely as we can.
And let me ask you briefly about Iran. We've seen these protests now for several weeks over the death of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini. It's now the third week. The supreme leader, the Ayatollah, is blaming the U.S. and Israel, which is, totally off base. We know that. But how widespread is this? Is this close to a tipping point or close to what we saw in 2009 with the Green Revolution, or is this sporadic? Is there any way to assess that?
It's difficult to say at this point, Andrea. Clearly, these protests are becoming more widespread. Clearly, the regime feels like it's under increasing pressure now from its own population. These are, by and large, women who are protesting, but it's not just women. That's how it started. These are young people who want to move into modernity. They want to be part of the world. They want to be connected. And the United States is going to continue to do what we can to help them stay connected to the rest of the world through technology and through the internet. We've also held accountable the morality police, in whose custody that young woman died, as well as other Iranian officials, and we will continue to look for ways to hold the regime accountable. The regime is accountable. They are responsible. They are the ones, through their actions and their deeds, have precipitated these protests. And as we've said before, we urge them to do the right thing and allow for peaceful protest and not try to dictate the individual lives and choices of Iranian women and youth.
John Kirby on all things troubling around the world. Thank you very much. Thanks for being with us today.
Yes, ma'am.